In this video I'm gonna show you the best way of loading web fonts in 2019 or 2018 or any time. At least it's what I'm currently doing. I've compared ease of use with performance, and then I've settled on this one great method. I'm David and my partner MPJ is still out traveling. This is a weekly web development show where we experiment with web development, mostly fail, but always learn at least something. You're watching DevTips. Message sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Coursera. Thank you, Coursera. Coursera partners with top universities and industry leaders such as UPenn, Imperial College London, IBM, and Google to provide you with the world's best online education experience. They have over 3,000 courses in subjects such as business, blockchain, machine learning, you name it. Either go for a single course or an entire master's degree. It's 100% online and very affordable. Go check them out at coursera.org. That link is also in the episode description. Follow that to show them that you came from here. And now let's get back to the show. Thank you, Coursera. First, let's get some business out of the way. Many in the comments commented about how the self-host preload example from my last video and the own font load with preload example was incorrect. What was incorrect? Well, the thing is that when I did the link here, I don't know if I copy-pasted from some source. Probably it's just me writing. I wrote source here, but the correct thing is HREF. Source is HREF. So we'll see how that works. In this video, I'm gonna show some more examples and the final way of dealing with font loads that I've decided on. I did those experiments in last video. I've done a few more experiments and we will check them out, see how they perform, and then I will show you why I chose the way to font load that I did. First, let's do an integrated terminal and then HTTP server dash this stuff. So let's host this. So if you remember from the last video, we can just check that out. We see that the web font loader and the web font loader asynchronous, took them 9 seconds and about 10 frames. That was a bit long. And these self-hosted fonts and the self-hosted fonts with preloading, they took the same amount of time. And so the thing with the preload here is that I did them incorrect and now I fixed them. So let's just check out how are they running when I fix them. Okay, so we have them. This is the one, the incorrect one. Let's just run that and see how that works. Okay, like that. And then let's just run with the preloading fixed. See how that works. Not that much difference. Because we have this very basic example with not much going on. I don't think it will have that big of an effect. Let's just try with the own font loader or the preload fixed. I felt a bit faster. Okay, so I fixed it now, okay? Let's get on with the show. So I got a few suggestions here what to do. Well, mainly fixed source is HREF. But when I looked at Zach's, you remember I said that I've been doing the Zach Leith example. Zach Leatherman, he did a talk, 5 whys of web font loading performance. We watched him. So one thing he did was he used font display. So actually there's this one neat CSS thing that is supported. I've taken the self-hosted preload version that I fixed and added swap to it. So first in the fixed ones I put the preload links up here, and then I've added font display swap here in the font face. And what this means is, so we have a few values here. We can do auto or block or swap, and swap gives the font face an extremely small block period and an infinite swap period. So what it does is that when we're using font display swap, if we have a fallback font that is loaded in the browser or on the operating system, it uses that and then it just will wait. So by doing that, we will have the unstyled text first, and as soon as we get the actual font, it will replace it. When we do the font display swap, we added font display swap here on each font face. So here's a font face, and here we have swap on this font face, and on this font face we have swap, and everything is just the same. So let's run that here. And you see we have the unstyled text. Boom, there comes the style text. So what is good with this is that for a user on a slow connection, we won't drop them when they're waiting, because they will see that something is happening. It's coming right there. Compare that to this initial example. We load and we have like this white stuff, and then we have invisible text, and then comes the web font text. So I tried this on to have my own with the own font loader example as well. So let's just the own font loader. Let's just show that. So that's basically that we have done the preload here, and we have all the font faces here. But then we run this font face observer thing that is basically doing a new font face observer. So it sets up new fonts, and then it waits for a few of them. And once they have loaded, they replaced the class name of the document with fonts loaded. And we have that in the CSS. Here, no. We have that in CSS, that everything is prefixed with the fonts loaded CSS. So first, everything is unstyled, sans serif, and then we load the fonts loaded body. So once it has loaded the fonts, it changes the class name of the document, and then it re-renders everything. Look at the original preload fixed. Own font loader. It's still a bit white, and then it replaces everything. Whereas if we add the font display swap to this on the font face, everything looks better. What did I do? I did the same thing here. I just added font display swap here to those. And that's it. But the funny thing is that this one, the body font family sans serif, I thought it would render this first, but it doesn't, and I don't really understand why. I thought that without the swap, I thought that what I expected was that this one, using the own font loader, should first render the body with the normal unstyled text, but it just feels like, I don't get this. It doesn't do what I expect. But when I'm using the font display swap, it's doing what I expected the code would do. So font display swap makes everything great. And then I got a comment on Twitter. It's like, why don't you do like Wikipedia does it? So how does Wikipedia do it? How are they doing it? Okay, Wikipedia is fast. No flashes of unstyled or invisible text. And if we inspect this, what are they doing? What are they doing? They have some font families here. And a lot of fallbacks. So they're not using web fonts, they're just using the system fonts. So I did a baseline here with system fonts, just to see how fast it loads without any web fonts. It loads fast. It's like the font display swap. It doesn't really matter. So this comment, yeah. Of course, if you want the fastest approach, just go with system fonts and nothing else. But when I was checking out Zach's example, I saw that he had a commit 18 days ago and all of the other commits were a month ago. Late preload after CSS at Joav's recommendation. So what he does in his examples, he has CSS here and he pulls in the big CSSs first. And here's also CSS. And here's CSS. He's using a WordPress site. And I will show a link to his examples. You can check them out if you haven't. And then, after all the CSSs, he put the preload here. So he preloads the font. They are self-hosted. And then he runs the font faces and ensure that the font faces have font display swap. So I figured, why not try that? Let's do the same thing that he did. Late preload. So instead of having, here we have some style, here we have the actual CSS, then we run the preloads, and now I preloaded all the fonts just to see, to get a change. Before, in the last video, I just loaded the first fonts that were visible. And then I added font display swap here. Font display swap. And then everything else is the same. Let's go for it. So we get the swap. And then it loads everything. I don't know what the preload did. So this queued at 226, and if we compare that to one of these that have preload, 226. This with the preload before starts slightly earlier at 209, and it was 226 on the last one. But if you read why did he add this, if you go to his demos, he says additional tests recommended by Yoav Weiss with font display and use preload all fonts and preloads placed after CSS requests to reduce first render penalty. I have a few alternatives here, and we will compare these ones that I did now with things working, and then when I added font display swap to them, Zach's late preload, and we have the baseline with system fonts, and then we of course do the original by just dropping in the Google fonts. And we'll see how does all this run. So this is the example that we try to mitigate. Not a good experience. Invisible text, all that stuff. Takes a long time to load. So for people asking, what is this software? Well, the software is that I just recorded when I clicked, and then I put everything together in Final Cut Pro, a video editing software. And then we'll just see how it runs. So let's go for this. On the top left, we have baseline. That is the one with system fonts. And then we have original. That is the one that is just dropping in Google. And then to the right, we have the self-hosted fonts with preloading fixed. And then to the right of that, we have self-hosted own font loader, the font face observer with preloading. And below those two, I've added font display swap to them. And then down to the left, we have the late preload suggestion to see how that compares. Let's run this. Baseline done. And then 512 on 509, 510, 515, 525. Remember, this is 5 seconds and then 25 frames. So let's check that again. So the baseline takes 211 frames. But still, even though none is done here, with font display swap, we still have text visible. So by looking at these examples, if I were a user on a slow connection, like an even slower connection, this 3G connection, on the original, I see an image, perhaps I will stick around to see what happens. I expect things to load. But on the two top ones, nothing has happened. I don't see anything. So I'm very, very much eager to abandon. Whereas when I have this unstyled text by using font display swap, I will stick around, I think. And even though things will be redrawn, boom, even though things are like, for each frame it's blinking a bit, not everything is redrawn at the same time. So we look at the self-hosted own font loader with preloading, the one in the in the bottom right. There we go. We got the paragraph text. And there we got the header and the bold text. So we have two reflows, is what Zach calls them. And you could mitigate this. So we take one of his examples here. Instead of this, we could do something like this. So he has 5 fonts, he waits for them, and then once they're all loaded, he adds them by using document.fonts. That is available in some browsers where you can just add the fonts. So his example is pretty neat, and if we look at our test run, in the top right here, the self-hosted own font loader with preloading, this one. Even though it has the best performance, 5 seconds and 9 frames, I don't like this thing that is invisible. Whereas here, this is visible. And then we could tweak it using Zach's technique so we don't get this double reflow. So we get boom boom. It reflows from here, from now it's normal text. Here now we got the actual text we're interested in, and we're waiting for the header, and there we got the header, and then we got the time there. We could redo that. So by using this technique of looping through the fonts, we could add them to the document, and then we would just get one reflow, so it wouldn't be the blinking things. But for me to keep all this stuff and dealing with manually loading and setting up the font JavaScript, you can do that, but for me I don't think it's viable. I'm a consultant, and when I deal with someone else's website, this is a lot of things to ask for. If you want to have someone manage all these, manage different fonts, you should be really interested in the performance to deal with this. And I think that is a lot of work. So if you compare with what is easy, this late preload, that's pretty easy. And this self-hosted fonts with preloading, font display swap, this is also easy. So I would actually go for this. Self-host the fonts, preload them, at least preload a few, the most important ones that you can see, and add font display swap. Then you would have to download the fonts, convert them to WAF2, and self-host them on the server. Add these link rel preloads. Add the @font face here. And then you can just use your CSS normally, the way you always done. So thanks to font display swap, we can just do things normally. We only have to add these @font face declarations. And then we do the preload. We don't see the positive effects of the preload here because the page is so small, but we will see good results on a bigger page. And then, of course, the next step would be to host these downloaded fonts on a different server. You're self-hosting them on a different server to take advantage of how the browser can connect to different servers. You could also run it on an HTTP2 server, but that is a lot more complicated. Download the fonts as WAF2. That's the first step. Add link rel preload. Add @font face declaration with font display swap. Use font family normally. That's my recommendation. That's the easiest way of dealing with web font loading to get a nice performance, and the key here is, of course, font display swap. That's the big trick. The hack is font display swap. But if you're really interested and want to get the best experience, go check out Zach Leatherman's experiments. They are available here. Performance sometime, live demos. You can experiment with all these. Go check out coursera.org. Follow the link in the episode description. Thank you, Coursera. This is a weekly web development show that comes out on Friday mornings at 0800 GMT. Figure out your time zone. Write suggestions in the comments for things you want us to make videos about. If I did something incorrect here, I probably did. Write that in the comments as well. We read all the comments. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!